I think what potentially could happen if the influx of digital nomads on the digital nomad visa causes problems like this is the government will just pull the digital nomad visa. Hey, what is up, guys? This is Brett here from brettdev.com and welcome back to the channel. Now, a couple of days ago, I had a friend, he reached out to me and he said, hey, dude, have you noticed that rental prices are really shooting up in Chiang Mai? He said, I've spoken to my girlfriend and I've spoken to a bunch of her friends, and they actually said that they're really pissed off about it. They're noticing it. They're Thai. They are obviously born and live in Thailand and in Chiang Mai. And they said that they're getting really pissed off with the increased price in rent. He then went on to talk about the digital nomad visa and the amount of digital nomads that are potentially getting it and coming to Thailand, and whether or not that's actually what's causing it. Is that having an impact on it? So I thought this would be an interesting topic to bring up, an interesting thing to discuss, especially considering what happened over the past several years in other places that digital nomads flock to, places like Lisbon in Portugal.
You have, let's say, thousands of Americans coming to a place like Lisbon. You drive up the price of real estate and housing here. And this is a country where minimum wage is about $800 a month for the locals.
People outside of Europe, mostly Americans, are coming here to enjoy 50% off housing costs. But in the process, it's making this city unaffordable to many who actually are from Portugal.
Now, my friend's primary concern here was the digital nomad visa. So as many of you may be aware, Thailand just about a year ago, 6 months to a year ago, started issuing this digital nomad visa for foreigners to come and live in Thailand. Now, it grants them to stay in the country for 5 years, not 5 years indefinitely, but they can go in and out and essentially get up to 5 years of stay in the country. To get a digital nomad visa, all you need to do is, be a freelancer, work for a foreign company, or own a business. I think that's the only 3 requirements. I should know, I have a video on it. But is this going to bring in a wave of people that, like I say, are going to affect the Thai economy? Our rental price is going to be driven up like they were in Lisbon and in other places in the world. I know there's a lot of digital nomads that go to Bali and all of that. Now, it's hard to say because, for one thing as well, what we don't know is how many people are claiming digital nomad visas instead of other visas. So there's always been a lot of digital nomads in Thailand, except they stayed here on tourist visas, they got education visas, and I've even spoke to a lot of people in person that are of the age to qualify for a retirement visa, but instead are going for a digital nomad visa instead. So the numbers are very hard to accurately get anyway, but even if you could get the numbers, it wouldn't really draw a clear picture unless you analysed how many, foreigners on the whole are staying long term. And it's kind of impossible with all the different visa options, especially like if retirees are getting digital nomad visas and things like that. Now, one of the issues that I think does impact the rental price, and I think this is directly tied to digital nomads, but not just digital nomads, foreigners in general. So this doesn't really include the digital nomad visas. I notice a lot of people come to Thailand, and this could be somebody that's retiring in Thailand, they're getting a retirement visa, and they come here with this mentality that they want to live here just because it's cheap. And they don't really care or understand. It's not that they don't care, they don't understand the local economics and how much things actually cost in Thailand, right? So, for example, you'll get a guy or a girl coming here from the United States, from the UK or Europe, and they'll arrive here and they'll go to rent an apartment, they'll go to rent a house, and they'll be told, okay, this is 20,000 baht a month to rent. When in reality, that place shouldn't be renting for any more than 10,000 baht or 15,000 baht. So they way overpay. But their mentality is, oh, well, I was paying double that back in America, or I was paying double that in the UK. And they just pay it because it's cheaper than their home country. They're not paying it because it's a good deal here. It's actually a very bad deal here. They're getting ripped off. But they'll come with this attitude that, well, it's cheaper than back home, so I'll pay it. It's a good deal. All right. Now, ultimately, is this going to affect price increases in rent? I think it will. And you do actually get landlords, I believe, that cater to this. Okay. So there'll be landlords that would prefer to probably rent to a foreigner than they would to a Thai person because they know they can overcharge them, basically. Right. They know that they come in with that mentality. They think it's a good deal. It's not a good deal because they haven't lived there for any period of time. So they don't understand that it's not a good deal. But in their mind, it is. And landlords, for sure, are going to take advantage of this. Now, is that only digital nomads that are doing that too? No, like I said, it's retirees. It's anybody moving here. But when we get more and more people coming here because of the digital nomad visa, is that going to happen? Yes, I think it's going to happen more and more and more. And I think that may be somewhat of what we're seeing. Another issue with foreigners coming here just because it's cheap they don't really integrate these types of foreigners. Okay. And when I say integrate, I mean things like, I wouldn't really put digital nomads who are coming here for cheap rent and cheap living in the same bracket as expats who perhaps are married, perhaps have families, because those types of expats do actually contribute to a greater ecosystem. Okay. Like in Thailand, if you're married to somebody, generally you take care of the family supported. If you have your own family here, you kind of, you're integrating in a much bigger way than you would be for somebody who's just essentially freeloading because they can get cheaper rent here than they can in the United States. But generally, those people don't tend to stick around either. Okay. If you come to a country and you're just coming because it's cheap, that's not really, it may seem like a good reason to live in a place at first, but eventually it'll become tiresome. And those people generally pack up and leave if they don't, get married or have families or integrate into the country. Now, I made a very interesting post on this. I think I called it like the problem with expat. Here's the real problem with expats coming to the country. And I posted it over on Nomad School. It was quite controversial. It's got like nearly 100 comments, maybe over 100 comments. I can't remember. It was about a year ago. But if you want to jump into that discussion, I'll put a link down to it below. Now, when I say Thailand, obviously I live in Chiang Mai. So does my friend, the guy who brought this up to me. So it's going to depend where you're living. And in Thailand, it's a funny thing because like the economics of, rental prices and things aren't the same throughout the country, just like in most countries, right? So for example, down in, I remember in Koh Phangan's the islands down south, Koh Phangan, Koh Samui, that little region. When I first come here, I first visited Koh Phangan about 13 years ago. And I remember being able to get a 1 or 2 bedroom, like a bungalow, like on the beach or in the jungle. And you wouldn't pay any more than 5,000 or 6,000 baht for it. Nowadays, what's happened is you've had a lot of Russians move to these places down south, and they're basically renting out these bungalows and then subletting them to other foreigners, right? So what you'd pay 5,000, 6,000 baht for 10 years ago, they're now wanting 30 or 40,000 baht, which is absolutely insane. It's basically made it so that the place is just full of Russian tourists or Russian visitors or whatever. And it's unsustainable for anybody to go there. So they have really completely fucked that small local economy up. However, I don't see that happening up here in Chiang Mai. I don't think that, because a lot of what's going on down there with the subletting, it is illegal and they somehow getting away with it. But up here and in the bigger cities, they wouldn't. Okay. So there are different various factors that affect rental prices across the country. And like, for example, that is a contained little ecosystem of its own, probably with its own governance, and if you get what I'm saying, where they can do different things that they wouldn't be able to do across the rest of the country. Also, another thing that is impacting rental prices and prices across the board in Thailand, which I think is important to take into account before anybody jumps the gun and says, oh, it's these digital nomads, they're driving prices up. It's very easy to point the finger and say, oh, it's them. It's actually inflation, right? So inflation has affected everyone across the world. It's affected prices in Thailand across all areas, not just rent. Like food is almost twice the price it used to be. Most things are almost twice the price, just like in the US, just like in the UK and everywhere else. And this inflation, obviously, if you don't know how inflation works, when there's more money in circulation, it's worth less, so prices go higher. This was all caused by our little government, global government psyop that took place several years back. Okay, we all know what that was. And it amazes me that there were so many people that thought it was so wonderful that they could just sit at home and get paid for not having to go to work, not realizing that they would be paying that back. Okay. There's no such thing as a free ride. There's no such thing as free money. And we're seeing it now. Everyone's paying it back due to inflation. So what I did actually notice in Thailand is pretty much straight after that, food prices and everything else started going up, but rent didn't. Okay. We are starting to see rents creep up now in Thailand, but it seems to me to be like the last thing, right? So it's almost like inflation never really impacted it, but it feels like it is now. Okay. So I don't necessarily think that it is because of a huge influx of digital nomads that we're seeing this happen. I think the primary reason is pretty much inflation, but it is something to think about, and it can primarily be a concern. Okay. Because we don't want, what happened in Lisbon, Portugal, and gentrification and all that happening in Thailand. Now, like I said to my friend, I think the government in Thailand are very, very good at handling this sort of stuff, and they always have been. Okay, I've been here for over 10 years, and there have been things that have happened like this in the past. There's been huge influxes of Chinese, and then there's been huge influxes of Indians, and then there's been huge influxes of Westerners. And it's kind of gone in cycles, okay? This was back in 2016, 17, I remember this. Are we seeing a lot more Westerners coming here now? Yes, I'm seeing a lot more Westerners. Granted, we've just gone through high season as well. This is probably the busiest high season I've ever seen in Chiang Mai. So you got to be careful. Like, are they Westerners coming here to live, or are they Westerners that are just coming here on holiday because it's the high season and people are just traveling more after what happened a few years back? But like I said, if it does become a problem here in Thailand, the government have a great way to sort it out. All they do is they'll just backtrack, backpedal, and change whatever they need to change. They have no qualms with going back on what they've done or saying, we've given you this, now we're pulling it and stuff like that. So I spoke to my friend. I don't think that, digital nomads really will ever affect the economy in Thailand because of the I don't know how you describe it, the protectionist elements of the government and how they do this. Like I said, I've seen it happen loads of times before. They'd make it easy for you to get an education visa. Then they'd make it incredibly hard. Then they'd say, you can get as many education visas as you want. Then they'd say you can only have it for 1 year. They tend to pull the strings, and it does annoy everybody and piss everybody off, but it also allows them to regulate and control. So to control this sort of stuff from getting out of hand, whereas in other countries, maybe like in Lisbon, where they don't have that level of control, maybe they don't do that. I don't know. But I think what potentially could happen if the influx of digital nomads on the digital nomad visa causes problems like this is the government will just pull the digital nomad visa. Now, I don't think that they will pull it for people who are already on it. Generally, once you've been issued a visa, you can't really have the visa taken away unless you break the law and get kicked out of the country or something like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if in the next year or two, if we do start to see a huge wave of digital nomads coming in, or way more people coming into the country than the actual economy can handle, to the point where it does actually affect the local economy and it does actually affect local people. It wouldn't surprise me, like I say, if they pulled the digital nomad visa and just made it harder for people to come here and stay. Okay, like I said, I don't think that's going to affect people that are currently on it. But for me, it's not really a concern. It's not really a worry because the government do tend to be able to handle this stuff pretty well. So overall, I do think that it's primarily inflation that's causing rental prices to go up and, food prices and everything else to go up due to money printing, which took place a few years ago. That's pretty obvious. But maybe it is the digital nomad influence. Maybe this digital nomad visa is causing this. Do you live in Thailand? What do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Brett from brettdev.com, and I'll see you later. Take care. Bye.